If you struggle to speak up in class or at work or give a presentation and you get super nervous right before you have to speak or share an idea with a group and your heart starts pounding and maybe your palms start getting sweaty, then this video is for you. Hi, if you're new to the channel, my name's Matt. I'm currently working as a strategy associate at Google, and before that I was a management consultant, but I make these videos because I enjoy it. Now, if you can't stick with me for the next 10 plus minutes without getting distracted, then honestly you should just click off the video right now, because this video is for people who are actually serious about improving their communication. And this is not for people that are just trying to watch videos to improve but then aren't going to take any action afterwards. And so if you're still with me, then make sure to full screen the video and lock in. Don't even scroll down to the comments until the end of the video, because the ideas that I'm about to share with you have honestly changed my communication for the better, and I hope that they can do the same for you. But without further ado, let's not waste any more time and get right into it. So the first thing I want to talk about is, why do we get scared to speak up in meetings? Or why do we get scared to give presentations? Why do we get scared to speak in front of other people? Well, fundamentally, it is because we have a fear of being judged, right? And that's a very innate and human thing, where we're scared of what other people will think about us, and we don't want to put ourselves out there, because by doing so, say for example, if you raise your hand in class and then the professor calls on you, now everybody's head turns toward you and you feel the pressure suddenly that you have to say something witty or something intelligent, and you don't want to make a fool of yourself, right? And it's completely normal. It's built into the human experience because we are tribal creatures, and so obviously it evolutionarily is smart to fit in and not to be an outcast. And so the thing is, what people don't realize is nowadays the repercussions of being an outcast in society are not nearly as bad as it was in the past. You're not going to die just because people cast you out from their social group. It probably will sting a little bit and it will suck, but you will still be able to access food, shelter, water, what have you, the basic necessities. Now, why do I talk about all this? Well, I talk about this because back when I was a student and back when I was even an early professional, I always had this problem where I would struggle to speak up in class. When the teacher called on me, I would be really scared to voice my opinion. And even at work, I would be scared to say what I was thinking in meetings or just speak up in general. And it got so bad that when I was in college, I even went so far as to take a public speaking class, because I thought that that would solve the issue, right? If I could just learn how to become a great speaker, then that should solve my issue, right? But it didn't. And fast forward to a few years after I'd graduated and I was working full-time at BCG, which is a management consulting firm. And even there, I was struggling to speak in meetings with clients. And it got so bad that I started getting feedback from managers about, hey, maybe this is something that you should try to improve on, and you should, raise your opinions more in meetings. And I actually signed up for a coaching, because there was this coaching program that the consulting firm ran for junior consultants. If you were looking to improve on a certain skill, then you could sign up for this. And it was typically like a more senior consultant or someone who had expertise in that particular practice, and they would guide you and try to mentor you and help you set you up for success, basically, to improve. And so I remember going into my first meeting with my mentor, and they basically asked me about, okay, what's the issue here? And I told them, hey, like, I'm terrified to speak up. I have trouble not getting really nervous before presentations. It's that I'm just so terrified for some reason. And I have so much nerves and anxiety before I have to speak. And they said something to me that really stuck with me to this day, which is that, Matt, I think it's not a problem necessarily with your ability, as you've mentioned, or your capability. I think it's actually a problem mentally with having too high of a standard when it comes to what is acceptable to say out loud. And let me give you an analogy here. Essentially what was going on was, say if you are a pole vaulter and you're trying to obviously jump over a bar. Now in our scenario, let's say that the height of the bar is equivalent to what you could say is the quality of whatever idea that you are trying to present, or you're thinking in your head. Say you're sitting in a meeting, someone says something, and a thought pops up in your head. Now, you could do two things. One, you could not say anything and keep that thought in your mind and not voice it to the group, or you could say something and let everyone know what you're thinking. Now, everyone is having thoughts in a meeting, and not everyone is sharing it though. And if you're someone who struggles to share what you're thinking in meetings, or you really, really struggle, you get super, super nervous before speaking in class or at work, this is probably the issue. What's actually happening is you probably have a ridiculously high standard, a ridiculously high bar set for what is considered acceptable to share, right? Like you want it to be the perfect idea. It has to be 100% accurate, and you're not gonna say it unless you know it's true or it's backed up by some sort of evidence or data, right? Now, on the other hand, maybe you have a coworker who talks too much, right? Way too talkative and just says whatever comes to mind. And maybe he or she even got in trouble for saying whatever came to mind with no filter. That's an example of someone with too low of a bar. But the balance and what is actually acceptable is probably somewhere in the middle here, right? This is what is truly acceptable. And from experience, what I've found is that as humans, we tend to overestimate other people's judgment of us. And we tend to set the bar a lot higher for ourselves than what other people would set for us. So if you've heard the phrase, you are your worst critic, then you'll know what I'm getting at, which is the fact that we are always the most critical of ourselves, and it's exactly the same when it comes to sharing our ideas with others. We want to make sure that the ideas that we're sharing are well thought out and portray us as, intelligent, thoughtful, witty people, right? Of course we want to put our best foot forward. But if we set the bar way too high, and if you're a perfectionist, or maybe you're someone who's just a high achiever, if you're watching this video, you're probably a high achiever because you're trying to improve on a skill and an ability that you have. And so that probably means you set a pretty high standard for yourself, which is a good thing. But we always have to be careful that we don't let the standard become a barrier to us actually practicing and improving, which leads me to the second idea, which is in order to improve your communication and to actually get good at presenting and speaking to others and conveying your ideas in a way that they can understand, the only way to get good at that is to do it and to just practice and to get the reps in. And obviously, not everyone is going to start out as a great natural communicator. I certainly wasn't this way in the beginning, and if you're watching this video, maybe you don't consider yourself to be an amazing communicator either. There's always room to improve, but in order to improve, we have to be willing to look stupid every once in a while, and we have to be willing to be judged a little bit every once in a while, because we're not going to be able to be the best speaker from day one, right? And so that brings me to this next idea here, which is the moat of low status. Now, you may have heard of this concept before, or maybe it's your first time hearing about this, but the moat of low status essentially highlights the fact that in order to get good at anything, any skill or ability, not just public speaking, not just communication, it could be a sport, it could be playing an instrument, it could be posting on social media, for example, if you're a content creator, it could be starting a new business, what have you, doesn't matter. In order to get from like novice, complete beginner to an expert or a master of something, you have to be willing to go through a period in the beginning where your relative status compared to where you were before decreases, because you're putting yourself out there and you're messing up left and right, and it's not pretty. And other people maybe are looking at you, maybe they're judging you, maybe they're saying things behind your back that don't make you feel good. But everyone who has ever mastered or become good at a skill or an ability has gone through this whole process, right? Let's take athletes for an example. In the very early stages of learning a sport, like tennis, for example, it's going to be quite difficult because maybe your hand-eye coordination is off, and maybe you're missing the ball whenever someone feeds it to you, or maybe you don't know how to serve properly, and every time you serve, the ball's going out, right? It's embarrassing and it's frustrating for a lot of people. But only after you go through this moat of low status do you finally get to the other side and start to really become an expert at your craft. And at that point is when people start to notice and say, wow, you're really good at this thing. Or, wow, you're so good at this. How did you get so good at it? Well, for 99% of people, you're not going to be born suddenly like an expert at playing tennis, for example. Or you're not going to be born suddenly an expert at communication or public speaking. Or you're not going to be born with all of the knowledge that's needed to be an expert at a specific topic. And so the point that I'm trying to drive home here is you have to set your ego aside and be willing to look stupid in the beginning in order to improve. And so coming back to this idea here of lowering the bar when it comes to speaking up in meetings and in class or giving presentations, I'm not saying that, look, don't have high standards and don't try and don't prepare well when you have a presentation, for example. What I'm saying, though, is that if you have an idea that you want to share with someone or share with a group, don't necessarily discount the value of your own idea because it doesn't meet your standard. Because in many cases, it may still meet the standard that is acceptable for the group. And people will find it valuable whether or not it's the right answer. Oftentimes, it's helpful if you're brainstorming, for example, ideas, to just put a bunch of things out there so that others can also benefit from hearing the ideas of those around them. And so the next time that you catch yourself feeling like you want to say something, but you're like, oh, I don't know if that's a good idea. I think I'm going to look stupid maybe if I say that, or I don't know if this is 100% right. I need to fact check it first. Let me look up the stats first on my phone. The next time you catch yourself doing that, just stop and take a deep breath and remember that you need to lower the bar, because the only way to improve is to just put yourself out there and to actually do the things that are going to lead to sustainable improvement. And so to make this even more actionable for you, I want you to tomorrow, whether you're a student or you're at work, tomorrow when you go to class or when you go to work, make it a goal for yourself to speak up at least once and to present any kind of idea, or maybe it's asking a question and putting yourself out there, even if you know it's going to make you nervous. Because at the end of the day, yes, you're going to feel very nervous when you're speaking and when you're in the meeting or in class and you have to raise your hand and have everybody watch you for a few seconds. But once you get over that hump, you're actually going to feel even more confident to do it again. And you'll realize that it's not really that bad. People are always overestimating how much other people around them are judging them. And there's this concept called the spotlight effect, which essentially highlights the fact that everyone thinks that the world is all about them. We all think that the world revolves around us. Everyone is living in a movie of their own life where they think that they are the main character and everyone else is just a side character. Isn't that hilarious? So people are not thinking about you nearly as much as you think they are. And if anything, that should embolden you to go out there and just practice and try new things without the fear that others will judge you. At the end of the day, if somebody ridicules you or makes fun of you because you said something weird or you messed up in a meeting or you didn't get the right answer, that's a them problem, not a you problem. But anyways, that's all I got for you guys. Hope you found it helpful, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.